Welcome. Is it glass or crystal? That's the question. I'm going to show you today in a very in-depth, complete guide on how to identify crystal, how to tell the difference between crystal and glass, and I'm even going to answer, is crystal safe to drink from? Stick around, it's going to be a really interesting video. Okay, so the crystal I'm referring to is known as lead glass and was invented in England in 1675. Now, the first item produced in lead glass was a drinking glass. Since then, everything now is made of crystal or lead glass, chandeliers, jewelry, drinking glasses, decanters, picture frames, you name it. There's not much that hasn't been used with crystal. Okay, so first off, what's the difference chemically between glass and crystal? Glass is made up of silica, sodium, and calcium. Silica, basically sand, has a very high melting point, and they add in sodium and calcium, one to lower the melting point, and two for the viscosity, which basically means it's easier to work. And the melting point or the working point for glass when sodium calcium is added is around 1100 degrees. And the difference between what I've just described there and crystal, known as lead glass, is the calcium is replaced by lead oxide. So to create lead crystal, basically it's silica, sodium, and lead oxide. And the melting point of that is 600 degrees, and the working temperature is between 600 and 800 degrees. So as you can see, it brings it right down in temperature. So let's get down to today's real question, which is how to tell the difference between glass and crystal. And the answer isn't just one thing. There's a whole host of little questions you need to ask yourself in order to tick the box and say, yes, this is crystal. Now, first of all, what you have to understand is crystal is 24% or plus lead contained within the glass. So it's going to be much heavier than normal glass. If you have two decanters, the heavier one is more likely to be crystal if they're the same size. However, it's very hard to gauge weight of a single item because obviously the walls could be thicker, it could be a bigger item. So weight on its own is hard to distinguish unless you're used to handling things and know what seems exceptionally heavy for its size. So that's your first indicator. Your second indicator is if it's a cut crystal piece, feeling the crystal, is it sharp? Can you see mold lines, things like that? If it's a molded piece, can you see the mold lines? Crystal, if it's cut crystal, will feel very sharp to the touch. But again, you can confuse that with cut glass. It takes years of experience of handling the two, but crystal is just that much more refined and sharper. Now, the ultimate way of knowing crystal is refraction, light refraction. Look for the rainbow. So what do I mean by this? When the light passes through lead crystal, you can see rainbows. Here's one example of a photograph that I've already got up for sale on my eBay. Just want to show you, point out this little section here. You can see there where the light is caught the refraction, and you can see the rainbow colors, and you have a good spectrum all the way from blue, yellow, all the way up to the reds. That is what you're looking for in crystal. You don't get that in glass. An even better example is this set of Austrian crystal beads I have. Now, these beads to the naked eye are, when there's no light around, are pure white, clear. Yet the second you put light, sunlight or flash camera light on them, look at the rainbow colors that come out in the crystal. That is refraction. Now, that can happen to a degree with the cutting of cut glass, but you don't get that rainbow effect. That states crystal. That is your biggest key for finding crystal versus glass. There are a couple of other things. Now, depending on what item you've got, you could have a big decanter that you think is crystal. You could have a chandelier, picture frames, things like that, in which case this next test wouldn't be relevant. But if you've got a vase or a drinking glass, just give it a flick and listen to that beautiful ring. If you had just plain glass, you'd have a dull thud. you wouldn't have that beautiful ring. Another way of doing it, providing it's a drinking glass or a vase, get yourself a little cup of water, simple water, nothing else, nothing special in it. Wet the tip of your finger and watch this. You can make the crystal sing. You can't do that with glass. They are basically the pointers on how to identify crystal from glass. Okay, so you now know how to identify crystal, but you really need to value it then. And to value it, first of all, you need to know who made it. So there are two ways to find out who made your crystal. Now, if you're very lucky, then your crystal is signed. Now, when it's signed, it'll either be signed on the underneath or around the rim at the bottom. Now, bear in mind, when a glass or decanter is finished off, crystal one, it has this, which is called a star cut pontil, and they can even sign in these little cuts. So it's really hard to find the signature. Now, the signature could be etched or engraved, but it could be seriously faint. You need to move your piece around using sunlight, using any light you got, looking for little reflections until you find that little mark. I suggest when you find it, if you're a dealer or trade, you want to sell it on, put a little sticker right next to it or on the marks, you know where it is, you haven't got to keep looking. But what if you can't find the mark? Now, a lot of modern manufacturers of crystal use labels. Now, that's all well and good if it's a wedding present and it goes in a box and it never gets used. The label's still on it 30 years later. But what if you had that vase 20 years, 30 years, or the glasses, and you've used them and the label's long gone? So there's no way now of knowing who has made your bit of crystal. The label's gone, there's no signature. So what do you do? The only thing you can do. Now, this little glass here is a Waterford crystal. It is a signed one, but if it wasn't signed, the only way I would identify this would be to come over to a site like this. Now, this is Replacements Limited, so it's basically replacements.com. Now, this site specializes in replacing if you've broken something in your set and they replace a single piece or something. Now, I've just searched for Waterford crystal. Now, if you come down here, you can see all the different patterns of Waterford crystal. And you click on one and zoom in, and you just match the crystal up to what you got. And then even if it's not signed, you can simply say, okay, well, this is it. It is Lismore pattern. It's Waterford crystal, undoubtedly, because a lot of the time the patterns were done by one company. That's not always the case. Sometimes multiple companies done the pattern, but then you just go on and you compare the glass, the size, and so forth. But in all honesty, that is a really hard, painstaking thing to do, searching through thousands of patterns looking for your item. So if it's not signed, it hasn't got a label, you're going to really have to put in the hours. Now, similar thing with glass. In order to value your glass, you need to ask yourself a series of questions. First of all, glass has been made for a long time and in so many different things. You need to know the age of the glass. What period does it belong to? Does it come from a really collectible period like the Art Nouveau or the Art Deco period, in which case it's going to really demand a high price? Shapes. If you look at shapes, I'll give you an example. If I was to search just a drunken bricklayer by a company called Whitefriars Glassworks, look at the shape of this vase here. You got 3 bricks and the center one is off-centered, same as you would as if you're building a wall, I suppose. But look at that for a vase. Now, no one else has done that shaped vase. So if you identify it as a 1960s piece, you identify that shape as a unique shape purely to Whitefriars Glassworks, already you know you're well on your way. Then colors and patterns, things like that. So the only way to figure out who's made your glass if it's not signed, because some glass is signed but majority isn't, is age, style, period, object, what is it? Is it a vase? Is it a drinking glass? Is it a cow? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Then anything unique about it, shape, color, pattern, things like that, and try and narrow down who's made your item. If it was something like that, Whitefriars, Drunken Bricklayers, very simple to nail on the head. Okay, so now you know who's made your crystal or made your glass objects. Now, what's the value difference between crystal and glass? Now, I'm going to use a simple decanter, or decanters, if you like, as an example. Now, if you was to go to a factory and buy a simple decanter, you want a standard pressed glass one, you're talking 10, 20, 30 pounds. You want a standard crystal decanter, you're probably talking 150 to 200 pounds, and I don't mean any good names. Same as the second-hand market. Take a look at this. Okay, we're going to start off with this. This is a decanter I sold this week. It's an unsigned, unattributed decanter. I've just put it down as a square whiskey decanter crystal. I haven't guessed any names or nothing. As you can see there, I achieved £30 for a standard second-hand crystal decanter with no name, no attribution. Yet if I was to come across here, they put it down as cut glass, but it's not. It's actually molded glass. It's worse than what I've actually sold it as. This is a plain molded glass decanter. There. They've put it down as a cut glass decanter. Okay, fair enough. They sold it for 99 pence. I actually think that was cheap. I think that was worth probably £3, £4, £5. But there's the difference. A standard decanter, a couple of pounds. A standard crystal decanter, £30. Now, if you want to take into consideration names, take a look at some of these. Look at the prices on some of these things. Take a look at this one here. You have an Edinburgh Crystal ruby flashed thistle glass decanter, shaped like a thistle, £920. Underneath this, you have a Waterford claret jug, £899. You come down here, Waterford, £700. Let's go Waterford again. See if I can find St. Louis, but there, £600. If you want to go off a name, you're going to be paying money. Baccarat, £550. And I can tell you now, some people are going to be asking thousands for some decanters, St. Louis and Baccarats. Crystal, as far as I'm concerned, unless it's going up against something that is period like Art Deco, if you get a nice Art Deco centerpiece with a nice frog, you can get a good 100, 150 quid, couple of £100, or a Lotz vase, £800, £900. If it's going up like for like, crystal enough will always win 10 times, tenfold, wherever you want. If you're going to compare standard crystal to antique glass or designer glass, then it's not going to be a fair comparison. But if you're looking at standard drinking glasses, decanters, vases, things like that, crystal is always probably best part at 10 times the cost of standard glass. Here's a question I get asked all the time. Does your lead crystal or glasses need special attention for care? And the honest answer I can give you is, it doesn't matter if you've got crystal, lead glass, ordinary potash glass, soda glass. It is simple. Just put it in a bowl or sink of warm soapy water. Use a very soft sponge, delicately wash the item. Make sure you remove any rings. My partner, she had her engagement ring on, washed out my beautiful crystal tumbler, and it actually cut it in half. So take any rings off. Very carefully, nice soft cloth, wash your crystal or your glass onto a draining board, a nice soft cloth. That is all it needs. And that will bring all them beautiful colours back through, give it a nice clean crystal goblet. No chemicals, no nothing, just warm soapy water. Okay, now comes a shocking question. How many of you can answer this? Is it safe to drink from lead crystal? Well, I can tell you, I just wrote a blog on my website, Antiquesarena.com, all about crystal, which is what prompted me to do this video. And whilst doing my research, I had a shock. Now, when you consider how much lead crystal has been made or is probably still being made, I was really surprised to see that the FDA had done a study. Now, this study indicated that if you store alcohol with a high alcohol content, so spirits, in a decanter, so whiskey in a whiskey decanter, over a long period of time, then the lead cased within the glass will actually leach through into the spirits. So when you're drinking your whiskey, your vodka, whatever it is you drink, you're actually consuming lead as well if you leave the alcohol sitting in the crystal decanter. What the FDA actually advise you is to not store your alcohol in the decanters, just use them as a serving tool if you're having dinner parties, things like that. They also recommend you don't drink out of fine lead crystal every day of the week. What they say is it's okay on occasions, but if you drink out of it every single day, the lead is going to leach into the liquid and eventually is going to build up in your body. Now, lead oxide is toxic to humans. So I'm quite shocked that, well, I didn't realize that lead leached through the glass into the liquid anyway, but the studies show that, yeah, it's actually not safe to drink and store liquids in lead crystal containers. Now we've learned that it's not even really that safe to store your alcohol in whiskey decanters and things like that, and you shouldn't really be drinking from it that often. It really brings you to the question of, can you recycle it? Now, glass, you can recycle glass endlessly. All you need to do is make sure that the glass is not contaminated, and the kiln is free from any other debris, stones, metals, things like that. The only thing going in is glass. And if you want clear glass, only put clear glass in, because if you want messed up glass, chuck all the different colors in and it's going to come out God knows. But yeah, glass can be recycled endlessly. So glass jars, things like that. Now, lead glass is a different thing. It's actually classed as toxic waste and goes into landfills. They can remove lead from the glass, or the lead that's encased within the glass. However, there is not a cost-effective way as of yet from what research I done when I wrote my blog. So quite surprisingly, I learned that lead crystal was made to be reused, not recycled. Okay, so in finishing off, hopefully now you understand how to identify crystal from glass. So you'll know, is it glass or is it crystal? You'll know that crystal holds far greater value than glass when it's like for like, but doesn't really compare to antique glass. You know how to identify your crystal or your glass now by trying to find the signatures or using the shapes and colors and patterns to find makers. You know it's not safe to drink out of lead crystal too often, and whatever you do, get that whiskey out of that decanter and back into the glass bottle. That's what I reckon you do. And finally, we know that lead crystal is toxic for our planet. So if you're going to buy it, buy secondhand because it's already been made. Try not to buy new crystal. If you're buying secondhand crystal, you're keeping it out of the landfills. Other than that, go check out my blog. It's antiquesarena.com. I've got a variety of different helpful blogs, and I'm writing regular articles now to help people with all aspects of antiques, collectibles, collecting, and antique dealing. So go check that out and subscribe for my newsletter. And remember to subscribe to my channel if you've enjoyed this content, and I would always appreciate a thumbs up. Always helps with the YouTube ranking. Brother, I think I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you've enjoyed. I've enjoyed making it. I've learned quite a bit myself between the blog and the video. It's been quite interesting. So thank you very much, and I will see you on the next one.